Hi, my name is Elise Chenier and I'm a Associate Professor of History at Simon Fraser University in Burnaby, British Columbia. In 2014, I published an article titled Sex, Intimacy and Desire Among Men of Chinese Heritage and Women of Non-Asian Heritage in Toronto, 1910 to 1950, in a special issue of an academic journal called Urban History Review. You know, we've always thought that Asian men who migrated out in the 1800s and early 1900s to countries like Canada, the United States, and Australia lived lives alone as bachelors, but in this research, I show that many of them in fact partnered with white women, and some of them married and had families and lived what you could call a normal family life. This website provides access to most of the research materials I used to write this article, including oral history interviews, photographs, newspapers, and archival documents. By scrolling to the right, you can follow my research path from the beginning straight through to the end. You'll see how I started out talking to local Toronto experts in Chinese Canadian history, and how over time I gathered almost 40 interviews with people who provided first-hand accounts about these kinds of relationships. I also analyzed 4 decades worth of Toronto's tabloid newspapers. I collected documents from the Presbyterian Church Archives, the City of Toronto Archives, the Police Archives, which was a dead end, and also other Toronto newspapers. Well, part of the reason I created this website was to make sure that anyone who was interested in the history of interracial relationships could access the material that I've gathered. This is what oral history is all about, really. It's about getting our stories out there, especially stories that are little known, as this one is. And that leads me to a very important point. I really have to thank Mavis Chu, the person who, as you'll see if you scroll to your right, put me on to this story and was a constant source of information and inspiration. I also created this site as a way to help you learn how to think like a historian. Whether you're a history buff, a high school student, an undergraduate or graduate student, I think there's material here that will help you on your own journey of discovery. The complete collection of primary sources I used for this project can be found in the archives section. What I can't put up on this website are materials from the archives that are restricted, so only I can see them, and if I publish them, they have to be anonymized. I also can't post published novels and autobiographies or any of the secondary source materials that I used, because all of these are protected under Canadian copyright law. If you have access to a library, however, you should be able to find most of these materials yourself if you're interested in reading them. You'll see my article at the very end of the research path. It's protected by the same Canadian copyright laws, but fortunately the editor of Urban History Review gave me permission to make it available here, free for anyone. The stories gathered here remind us about the complexity of the past and the value of studying it. We hope you enjoy sharing my process of discovery and learning about interracial intimacies during the first half of the 20th century. Thanks for visiting, and be sure to send us your feedback. We really want to know what you think.